Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So the purpose of today's video, we're going to be discussing some tips in your garden, things to look out for, and how to get the most production out. So I had put in some big boy tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes, and they are a determinate breed. So what does that mean? Indeterminate and determinate. Personally, I had never heard about this type of stuff until I was talking to some old timers over at a garden center. So here's what I ended up discovering. So determinate brands, they have a predetermined lifestyle or life length, I guess I should say. And what they do is they grow, they get large, they produce fruit, and then they will die. So that's what I have planted out there right now. And they are producing a lot of fruit, which is really great. But I want to be able to keep that going for as long as possible. So I had to start looking for indeterminate tomatoes. And here's what I found. It is very hard to find those here locally. I don't know about your part of the country, but I did not see any seeds or any plants that was anything having to do with determinate. And when you ask the people at the garden center who work there, they ain't got a clue what you're talking about. So I did a little research, and here's what I've ordered, guys. I want to show this to you. So here's what I was able to find out. Looking over, I went to Amazon to see what I could find after doing a little research on Google. And I found this pretty cool little seed pack here. And what it does is it has a lot of different varieties. So this is going to be kind of nice to see what type of tomato plants grow well and what the flavors of them are. So here's what they've got in here, guys. We have the Black Creme, the Castelludo, I can't pronounce that, Giant Belgian Pinks, Giant German Johnsons, and these look pretty cool. That Black Creme looks kind of cool. It's almost like a black and dark red looking color. It's pretty neat, but that's not even the coolest one I've found in here, guys. So here's some more of the variety pack here. We have the Giant Old Germans, the chocolate stripes. This Cherokee Purple, that's kind of an interesting looking tomato. I figure it might be pretty good. And then, of course, the French Marmandy, I don't know. Like I say, man, when it starts getting into these terms and words from other countries, good luck. So there's a few more. We have the Mortgage Lifter, the Pink Oxheart, the Roma tomato. I think we've seen that in the stores plenty. And then the San Marzano. Kind of interesting looking tomato. I figure I might check this stuff out and see how it all grows. But always improve your garden while you can. Then we have this Castelluto Pomodoro. I guess that's pronounced right. This is a rather large tomato. I'm going to put out, as you can see, it's got the lumps and all that kind of weird looking stuff to it. But what I've noticed over the years is these misshapen type tomatoes typically have the best flavor. And this thing gets really large. It looks weird, but here's about how big they get. That's a pretty nice sized tomato. 2 hands to hold that thing, guys. So looking forward to actually getting some of these out. These are heirloomed as well. They are a newer breed than a lot of the older styles that we are used to seeing. And they are not as susceptible to catching disease, which is kind of nice. Then I think I'm going to add some of this golden zucchini out. This is about the size you want to pick that stuff. I've tried some. Been years ago, but I can tell you that this stuff produces even larger or even more quantity than most of your squash and zucchini is going to do. You're going to be surprised to see 4 or 5 of these things developing at a time, and they taste great. But before I can get all that stuff planted, I had to get out and cut all that grass back. I'll have to go out and till it this evening and then rake a lot of that grass and weeds and stuff that's out of it. Most of it looks like grass. I'm going to have to rake all that root out and all that stuff to form my mounds. I'm going to put things on mounds. The main reason for that out here is it's easier for me to build the dirt up that way, putting a little perlite in with it and stuff. Because what I've noticed is because of the sand content in this soil, when we get those heavy rains, it tends to pack in around the roots. And that can cause you problems later on. So adding a little perlite to your soil, that works pretty good. Now you can go and you can buy the garden soil that has perlite mixed into it, but you can buy like 3 or 4 bags of perlite for what that bag of dirt is going to cost. That would be the way I would recommend doing that. So once I get all those leaves and that grass and stuff and all the roots removed out of that stuff, you got to make sure you do that or you're going to have issues like what's going on with the backside of that garden, guys. You want to do that. That's going to get all that stuff so you're not dealing with weeding as much. And once that fruit starts to come in, it should be on mounds is the way I'm going to do it rather than rows. I'm going to do mounds because I think I can manage the garden a little easier. When you have a mound, it tells you 36 inches between rows out there in the garden. And then your plant is like exploding on both sides and you can't walk through the garden anymore, it's time to start thinking about mounds. That's a good problem to have because you're going to have a lot of fruit. You're going to have a lot of stuff to pick off those plants. But it can be kind of a bad problem when it comes to being able to weed, because if you're not able to walk between those rows and walk between those plants, the grass is going to grow. So the more time you spend in the garden, even if you're not out hoeing all the time, if you're walking the rows, you're going to be trampling down that grass and it's going to eventually wear in a trail. So you don't have to do as much weeding, and I would highly recommend that. But I am looking forward to these new style tomatoes. I was showing some of this stuff off to my dad and my aunt, kind of what we're planting out there. And they both seemed like they were pretty happy about it. My aunt, she has had a little experience with that type of tomato before, said they taste really good. So we're going to see. I've noticed the uglier tomato, typically the better it tastes. And some of those, like the Roma tomatoes and things like that, they're going to be great for going and making salsas and stuff as well. Those are great for canning as well. You could probably can a lot of that other stuff, but those kind of weird looking shape ones, most of the time what I see them do with those is they will make like tomato flake, put it on your bread, stuff like that. But we actually use those in the food processing, and you would take those and you would turn them into a puree, and then we would turn it into a flake. But we would add certain types of ingredients and stuff to that, and I can't really go over a lot of that stuff because you sign these agreements that you will not give recipes and stuff like that. But on the industrial setting, typically your better tasting salsas that you're going to find in the store are made with those weird looking tomatoes, guys. So I would highly recommend it. The Roma tomatoes, they're more of a garden for me. They use them for canning and stuff too, but I'm thinking more for salads and stuff. But true to form, the way it works down here is you get your lettuce first thing, and then it starts to bolt because it's getting too hot. And then we start getting our tomatoes and extra things that we can add to the salad, which kind of sucks. But understand, you can take and you can plant your lettuce and things like that toward the end of summer where it's not as hot. Coming into fall, your tomato plants will still be producing. Your cucumber plants are still going to be producing. And then you're going to be able to start making your salads and stuff like that as well again. So, it just depends on how you plant, the seasons you plant, stuff like that. I think I would have been fine if we hadn't had that frost, because the tomatoes would be probably about a month ahead from where they were now. And they would already be producing fruit off and stuff like that. But, frost hits, things gets messed up. It's going to be hot. We're getting heat advisories down here. This is Florida. It's pretty typical. So the main thing that I do is I try to work the garden early morning, which I missed it this morning. Unfortunately, I got up, let chickens out, fed the quail, chicken, stuff like that. And I just went back to bed. Didn't get up till 9:30. I was wiped out. So then I come out, cut everything back, got everything cleared up where I can get the tiller back there, and we'll work on that this evening. It doesn't take too long typically. The longest part is kind of what you're going to plan out. But one of the reasons why I'm going to go out there in the evening is I'm watching where that shade's moving. So about 2 o'clock, we're going to see where high noon is. And typically wherever high noon is, the shade doesn't shift too much before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. A little bit, but not a whole lot. And that's where I want to plant some of those plants where they're getting that morning sun and then that late evening sun. I don't want them having midday sun, only because in this area, that's the surefire way to scorch and kill a plant. Now, corn, it seems to like full sun. It doesn't care. It's growing. That stuff out there, I think I was reading on it, and it was talking like about 8 foot to 10 foot tall, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. We'll try and set a tripod up out there later on to show you how tall this stuff up. But I'm just under 6'1", and that stuff is towering above me. So it's pretty tall, I would have to say. I'm guessing it's at least 8 foot tall. Now with the corn that's producing out there, most of that out there does have 2 ears of corn on it. Now, I don't know if that's normal for silver queen corn or not. I know typically with corn, you're going to have plants that will produce between 2 to 4 or 2 to 6 ears, but it's strain dependent. So it just depends on that strain. This isn't a corn that I have had a lot of experience with, so we're just going to have to wait and see how it goes. And we may end up actually getting 3 or 4 ears on it just because it has stretched so long. But what I think is going to happen is it's going to go ahead and produce the corn. It looks like the silk's already been pollinated on most of it out there. And it just makes it a lot quicker without having to get out and hand pollinate, which I know we were going to talk about that, but everything's looking good out there. So I'm not going to go out and start touching the silk. You don't want to mess with the silk on those cobs unless you have to pollinate. And typically the easiest part is you want to take a corn that's growing next to it, and you want to take and shake the top so it rains the pollen down on it. And you can lightly brush your hand across the silk, which helps to seat some of that pollen and pollinate it. But it should not be something that you have to do. So I don't think we're going to have to do it out there. We're looking like we're going to have quite a bit of corn for us, and then quite a bit of corn for the chickens and stuff. And understand, I'd been thinning that corn out from the original plant because I didn't know how big that stuff was going to get. I ended up needing about 2 foot between each plant, which is considerable, I think. I think typically you see them about 14 inches apart in the fields, and with a large field you could probably do that. But I do have a lot of those wooded areas up around my garden, so that can affect some of the breeze. So I didn't want to put too much stuff up there. But this is Florida, and we get a very heavy breeze. But I hope everyone has enjoyed this video and understands a little bit more about tomatoes, because as I say, this is a learning experience for me as well. There's different types of strains I have grown my whole life, and when you want to try something new, that's a learning experience. So we're going to see how these tomato plants here, when these seeds come in. Looks like most of the seeds should be getting here on Tuesday, I believe. No, let's see, what is today? Today's Wednesday. It's bad when you don't even know what day it is. They will be here on the 3rd. So today is the 1st. So we're looking at 2 days. So I guess it's going to be Friday. So I got to get those mounds ready. I've got a lot of chicken manure and stuff like that in the back that's already composted down. It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to mix some of that in with the soil as well. And that's going to give me some really good mounds. I'm not going to go too heavy with it just because that front part of the garden is pretty well fertilized for the most part. I don't think I'm going to need to add a lot of stuff. Don't mean to keep hiccuping on you guys. I forgot my water. So anyway, I'm going to get off here. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and definitely stay tuned because we're going to be showing more stuff on these gardens, guys. Understand, the first garden you put in, you might get plants that really take off and do great. Then there's going to be some that doesn't do so great. And what you need to do is try to figure out what the issue is. Now, if you've got a disease in your soil and stuff like that, that's going to cause you some problems, and it is really hard to get that stuff out of the dirt, man. But that's not been my issue out here. My issue is more or less that afternoon, high noon sun just beating down on my plants, and it hurts the leaves. But as long as they're watered pretty well in the mornings, they may look a little wilty and heavy, but they will look good come evening and then the first thing in the morning before the sun comes out. So don't let that discourage you as well. Now, you don't want to let your plant get too dry, but you also don't want to overwater it, especially if you're using this type of a sandy soil, because you can impact or compact that soil around the roots and stuff and cause them to get waterlogged when they have water holding in there, because it's not allowing it to release, to evaporate. But it's also too tight and waterlogged on the root because there's too much water in there anyway. It can't take any more up, and that's typically where a lot of those kind of droopy, wilty looking leaves will come from. If they're a green, nice, healthy, fat kind of a droop, then you know it's because of too much water. If it's just frying up and it's folded up, burning away, then it's either you have too much nutrients in the ground. Probably not. That can happen if you're one of these people that get out and fertilize your garden every 2 or 3 days. It's kind of rare, but just don't do that. Keep it between every 2 weeks to a month. Just depends on what your garden and your soil is looking like, guys. But everyone have a wonderful day.